Are we live? I think I'm alive.
We're recording.
I'm
Yeah,
alive.
we're good.
I'm live.
And we've got a couple of attendees. So Kristen and Tim, we're just getting things set up here. So we'll be with you in a minute.
Perfect. You guys see it in the Facebook feed yet?
Oh, duh. Gotta look.
Not yet.
Let's see what's going on.
No dead air here. At least.
Good morning, Vietnam. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Okay. Little
Is it
jinx
rolling?
there.
We're
Good there.
rolling.
Not seeing
Happening
it.
now. There we
There,
are.
yeah, if you refresh our page, you'll see it.
Good deal.
Oh, yeah.
So
The last
grateful
time-
to be able to come across the ethers here during this time. What an amazing opportunity that we can all be together.
Thanks for
Yeah.
joining us.
Yeah, welcome everybody. And my thing is like, the last time I tried to post this live feed to my Facebook page, like just a little technical stuff here, just bear with us. It did the one from the week before. So now I see the watch video on our Proactive Health Collective of Keene Facebook page, but I don't really see how to share it. So I'm not gonna share anything for the moment until somebody can help me with that. But in the meantime, there's a nice link there on our Proactive Health. You can see us on Zoom, and that way you can actually ask us questions. We do a Q&A towards the end of the program and participate that way. So if you go to Proactive Health Collective of Keene Facebook, you're going to see you can watch the video right there. And you guys are streaming to Facebook, and I'm going to hold off a little bit until I figure out if I'm doing the right thing. But
Yeah, if you're new to Zoom, there's a little Q&A button on the bottom screen, and you can type in your questions, and that way we can get to your questions, or if you have a topic that you want us to talk about next session, put that in there. We can make it more tailored toward you guys.
yeah. This has been such a fun thing we're doing. Jean and Matt got talking I don't know, now a couple months ago, or when this whole thing was coming down, and just sort of like gave us the opportunity, and that's one of the big things we're talking about here, is how do changes in life bring opportunity? And how can we take things that might look negative and turn them into things that teach us, that we learn from, that we thrive under, that we become resilient from? And how do we do that? One of the best gifts has been getting to like be with you guys every single week, and we're back and forth with things, and there's so much power in having colleagues, wonderful colleagues, just to be a team and to share with. So I appreciate each one of you, and this has been so much fun for me, so much fun. And I
Awesome.
think our listeners are really enjoying that too. But for me, it's just, you know, iron sharpens iron, and just different perspectives. And I learn something from each of you every time we're together. So really.
And it's fun too.
Yeah, it's a
And it's okay to have
blast.
fun.
Yeah, it's really
Very
important to
important.
have fun.
Yeah. So, you know, I saw an article, I think it was on timemagazine.com, and it was talking about how pretty much everybody that's hospitalized for COVID-19 has underlying comorbidities. And it just made me think, you know, like our theme that we've been talking about for the last several weeks is how do we use this situation as a fuel for change? I mean, it's kind of a running theme that we've had. And, you know, we've talked about this. I've posted something that this is like a wake-up call for us to really look at our health collectively. It's an opportunity to say, wow, we're really not in great health. And if we were all in great health, this wouldn't really even be a factor. So our theme today, I think, is, how could this COVID-19 experience be an opportunity, and how can it and how can it shape our society? And this could be a positive or negative thing depending on how we take it in and what actions we take from there.
Mhm.
So I guess we'll start with, just the question of like, what opportunity do you think that it has brought to us? And I would ask the panel that. You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Today, I really want to talk about like yin and yang, is what's going on with the whole COVID stuff, but also just before that, when I look at Western society, the concepts of yin and yang come into mind. And I think that, and I'll probably explain that as we go on, but I think that this opportunity has just given us a time, like a timeout, to kind of step back and look at things and of a more yin perspective, which is more stillness and silence, versus the yang, the constantly go, go, go aspect of our busy lives, where we can't do all of these things that we want to do anymore. And I think that that's such an amazing opportunity, just to have that stillness to sort of assess your life and say, okay, is it going in the direction that I want it to go in? Are the things that I'm doing things that I really like doing, or are they are they giving me energy in my life, or are they zapping energy from me? And just that time and that perspective to kind of have a little bit of a pause, like hit the pause button.
It's funny that you say that, Allison. It's kind of like two ends of the spectrum that I hear for people. Like, we're on the end of the spectrum of like, we're busier than ever. I've like got so much stuff to do, and my wife Castine works from home, and the kids are home, and so it's how do we juggle all that? And from a different perspective, it's like, well, now we have to really prioritize our life and our schedule, and some of those things that maybe don't matter are forced to come out because we can't do them.
Right. Yeah. Where are you? It's making you aware of where you're putting your time. Whereas before it was kind of, you had the structure, you'd go to work, and on Tuesdays I would always go to yoga class, and on Monday nights I would always go to dance class, and I'd always be having something to do. And now it's like, okay, yeah, I think all of us are trying to figure out where are we putting our time, and being more conscious of that.
Yeah.
Great opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity also, like, to, as you're saying, be more introspective, seeing what's going on, with ourselves individually, and as well as collectively, because I think a big opportunity that we are getting now is understanding that, where are we at within ourselves? Like, what is our, like Jean, you're saying, what is our actual health like now? And I think the goal, I know one of Dr. Matt's and I's goal, like with our practice, is really to build the field and create a more healthy community. And how do you create a healthy community? Is you start with healthy people, right? You have to create the health within self.
Sure. And just because I know what you're talking about, but some of the audience might not know what you mean by build the field. Could you just
Oh, right. Yes, thank you.
say that?
So,
Yeah.
Coming back to, so at the Cheshire Wellness Center, we are a chiropractic office that focuses on a very light touch to help release tension in the body, rather than just moving a bone back into place. It's really to help bring coherence to the whole system, help bring brain-body connection to the system, to your whole body, so that you can, get the things that you want, rather than focusing on just trying to get rid of something. And we work with the field with it, which is our energetic signature, or our energetic presence within ourselves that goes deep into us as well as outside. So if you have a group of people and one person is just having like a bad day in that group, you can feel it. It's like, oh man, what's wrong with their energy? They're like really down. And so you have to either you ask what's going on. Are you okay? Like, I can feel that your energy is kind of down, as opposed to the other person on the other room is like super happy-go-lucky. You feel that they feel really good. And so you can feel that energy from them. So it is all energy. It's just how how much of awareness do we have with it? And how much are we aware of our own energy? So we have to look into ourselves to make different choices to create more health within ourselves. And then we can help amplify that within the community. So starting with the opportunity of what this is going to bring about, it's going to help bring more health to the community and to the world.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, I think it's called harmonic entrainment, and the idea is like if you strike one guitar string, the other guitar strings begin to vibrate as well. If you go hang out on Wall Street and everybody's stressed out, your physiology, your body will begin to match what's around you. If you go hang out with the trees, you begin to harmonically entrain to those. That's why nature is such a powerful thing. But I think, in relation to what's going on here today, in our society, is like if we have this fear and this whole vibe, if you will, and it's being blasted at us on the news, everything is all the bad news, and then we sort of take that in and that becomes our vibration. And then when we're sharing that with our community, and I guess the point is if we can become aware of that, we can have a different vibe that we share with our community as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. We tend to think from the perspectives we're coming from, if we keep the host strong. So there's the big debate between the germ versus the host theory. So you had Louis Pasteur who, discovered that microorganisms or germs cause disease. According to the resulting germ theory, he championed we catch bacteria, colds, viruses, and they should be prevented through drugs, vaccines, and other means. We were taught to be afraid of these germs and out of fear try to kill them with drugs rather than generating good environments in our bodies. And so Antoine Béchamp was different. Unlike Pasteur, who spawned a mentality of fearfully killing germs to prevent disease, Béchamp essentially understood the balance of and the importance of the environments we create with foods, which is another way, and that our internal systems either support or don't support disease. He theorized that germs were actually the chemical byproducts and the degenerative aspects of the unbalanced state of the body. For disease to take hold, there already had to be cellular dysfunction, dead tissue, and things in the body already diseasing it. That's when the germ or bacteria shows and sets up shop, because the body or an area of the body was in a state that lets them thrive and gives them a home. The cellular dysfunction or dead tissue is caused by malnutrition or exposure to toxins. This is where we have control. This is where we have to focus. And I think about our nursing home population and the food they are fed. One of my big fantasies is if I had unlimited wealth, and I've talked to colleagues like in compounding pharmacy, functional medicine, who've been like, that would be the coolest thing. Like if we could do like an assisted living facility where all of the food was whole, there was no microwave use. There was, just really good food. If you could take people, elderly people, homeless people off the streets and just put them in an environment where they had really great food to start. But our elderly people aren't getting that. They're getting crap food because Madison Avenue, watch these trucks that line up at the hospital with this horrible food. It's all nuked, and these people are getting nothing. They're drinking Ensure and Boost, which is high fructose corn syrup, and some synthetic vitamins that are thrown in there to make it look good, and horrible oils, omega-6, horrible like vegetable oils. They're eating stuff that is so bad for them. Their doctors have told them not to eat fat and lung saturated fat because of their cardiovascular health. But saturated fat is so important to make lung surfactant. And with COVID right now, we're seeing that's one of the big problems in the emergency rooms is the lung surfactant is lacking. So this is so much bigger than this virus. It's so much bigger, and we have so much more control, but it has to start from nourishing ourselves in the manners in which we're talking about. And that's why I'm not fearful. I'm not afraid.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. Really, this is what I've been kind of talking about. Is like really breaking it down to like, why are we making all these decisions? Why are we? One of my mentors, Tisa and Matt probably know Reggie Gold. He used to say, you can kill all the flies if you have garbage, but there's always going to be more flies coming back, right? So, but we start off our whole basis for how we approach life and disease and whatever on that germ theory that the germ is causing the disease, and it plays out into even today. So like when we have this situation, it's like we know that we could be feeding people well, feeding our elders well. We know that we can use nutrients, vitamins, and minerals to help people's immune system. And that would be, but if we're coming from the germ theory, there's only one way to look at it, is like we have to find a vaccine or something to kill the germ. And it deprives us of so much because, one of the concepts, I think you mentioned, we're talking about herd immunity, right? So this is a natural thing that happens among a species where enough people get this virus and then it creates an immunity because it doesn't keep getting passed around. One of the things, and again, because we're coming from this germ theory, oh my gosh, we have to be scared of it. We can't take care of ourselves. We have no control over this. And we have all this false information that, that we've been riding on for, a century, that we're actually limiting our opportunity as a culture to become immune to this. Because if we avoid it enough, okay, great, and eventually we have to come out of our houses, then that virus is still going to be there. And if we are still unhealthy and malnourished and all the things that we've been right all along with the chronic disease that we have, then what would you expect the outcome to be?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really cool. There's a company in Poughkeepsie, New York. It's called Indoor Organic Gardens. Brud Hodgkins is who is the leader of the whole thing, and we've been in touch. He grows microgreen powder like broccoli sprout and radish sprout and stuff like that. He hires in his town what he calls special gifts, not special needs, but basically special needs people. Their town actually on their meal programs for seniors through the government, their local government is putting the sulforaphane powder in their delivery of meals. This is the kind of thing. This is a superfood. This is the kind of thing, if we could get this kind of nutrition to our elders, to me, it's a huge fantasy I have, because I think all of those prescriptions, the number of prescriptions that our older people are on, the polypharmacia, I mean, would just come down. And all we're saying is we're just giving you real home cooked food. One thing I really loved about Prospect Place, our mother-in-law was there, my mother-in-law and my husband's mother was there for a while. And Norm Spiescher was the chef there. And you could find him in the supermarket buying a roast, buying ham, buying potatoes. They did nothing that came out of a box or whatever. It was all home cooked food. And this is getting back to basics, and we think that doesn't matter. Yes, it does. You can't feed people stuff that tastes good but is crap and expect them to thrive and expect them to be able to withstand something that's going around. So, we got to start from, it's got to be the grassroots up. And it starts
I love
with
that, Becky.
nutrition.
I love that. And it's a really good sort of like backtrack from a beautiful worldview. We were talking earlier that it's no longer a luxury just to, live your dream, which is a really nice idea, but that now it's time to give your dream. And if we don't know what that dream is, then it becomes really hard to know what the next step is. When we can step back and say, something like you just did. So if unlimited wealth, and I can, just begin what it is that I see for the world as possible right now. And that is that we have our elders that are supported, that have nutrient dense food, where we're allocating our funds where they need to be, et cetera, et cetera. What we're talking about here is that we're talking about then steps moving toward that. So oftentimes people are asking, well, what can I do now? 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 Well, the truth is that preparation is the most important part. So the best thing you can do now is to get really focused on what is that dream that you have for yourself, for your health, for your life, and for that of your community. And I think Dr. Tista was talking about this a little earlier. The first ingredient in any healthy community is healthy people. So if we focus on the folks in our community, focusing on healthy people, then we can start to move toward ultimately a worldview that we want to see, where we're allocating funds to nutrient dense foods. So we're moving toward a good momentum of health versus all of our funds that are going into the prescription drugs, you know, so that the hospitals are more what they should be, which would be a trauma center in that case, not necessarily a, you know, living institution or whatever. And it's also good to take a look around. I mean, Louis Pasteur is a wonderful person to bring up. He had some revolutionary theories at the time, and some things that may over time have sort of like gone off on a different track than they could have. You know, Pasteur is who basically created pasteurization. That's where that comes from. So if we think about that, the milkman who would be delivering fresh milk on the regular was replaced with an industrial factory, basically, so that now milk is on the shelf because it's been pasteurized to kill all of the beneficial bugs that, if left to their own devices, would eventually turn into something that we wouldn't want, and people could potentially get sick. So you can see how there's some aspects of that that are a bit alluring, like, oh, okay, well, I can go to the supermarket and I can get you know, pasteurized milk, and I know it's going to be safe for me and my family, relatively, whatever that means. And then we're replacing a nutrient-dense food chain with something that ultimately feeds more convenience and then goes into a whole nother worldview.
So if I could interrupt you on that, just to talk about that, a little plug for raw milk. So pasteurization happened because of the very unsanitary conditions these cows were kept in New York City, and these horrible places. And that's where disease was coming out of that. And that's not the same as when we're talking about, you know, Flying Cloud Dairy, Bill J. House out in Alstead. And you do strip your milk of all of its immune boosting things, the lactoferrin and all of that when you pasteurize it. And so, you know, unfortunately, people get little clips of things. It could be the polio vaccine. And so they just hear that and and see, but they don't, like, you know, go any further beyond that and do any research. So you say pasteurization because of this, but that was because of dirty, filthy, horrible conditions cows were kept in New York City. It has nothing to do with our great farmers today. And when we're talking about whole food, this whole thing is shutting down our farms. This whole COVID scare, people are dumping milk and eggs. You have to be planting right now to harvest in the fall. And this isn't happening. Do we understand what we're doing? It's way beyond any harm a virus could do to a population, what we're doing. And we're going to see repercussions that go way beyond, oh, you know, my grandfather died or something like that, and that was a shame. Our farmers, our food supply, watch what happens in the upcoming months, because the food supply is going to be drastically affected. And yeah. We've created much more of a devil than, is it the devil you know or the devil you don't know? The devil we don't think we know right now is going to rear its ugly head, and we're going to be all paying a price.
Right. And so we talked about what is the opportunity in this current crisis where we started, right?
Plant your garden. Get a good garden planted right now.
Yeah. Right. And there's tons of science to back up the positive physiological effects of being close to the earth and having your hands in the dirt. That's all measurable, really important. Nutrient-dense food, all really important. So if we're looking at what's the opportunity, well, that would be one action step toward one of two directions, right? So it's pretty obvious that if we sort of let the power that be, or the current trajectory of uncertainty, if uncertainty were to continue for too long, it has the potential of turning into a bit of a dark age, yeah? And at the same time, if we see the opportunity that we have here, which is one where we're talking about digging deep, where we're talking about preservation, and we're talking about really like this time for deep introspection and for really questing on what it is that we want to see in ourselves and in our lives, what also opens up as a possibility is a renaissance. And I'd like to suggest that while can be seen as a large cultural emergence or birth, it could also be personal. So the opportunity that you see in this current time, depending on what we look at, what we read, what we feed our mind and our bodies with, no matter what it is, whether we're talking about food or news or social media or conversations or even just thought loops that sort of get stuck in the head that we continue to think about, will precipitate either a renaissance or a dark age of sorts. Now, we can kind of sit back and take a deep breath here, because what we're looking at here is a bit of what I think of as more of a warning than anything else. I mean, the supply chains are still there. You can still go to your grocery store. Everything that we need is still running. The states will open back up, some of them sooner than later. I mean, we're very blessed to be in a state that hasn't been hit very hard. I think we're going to see things open up soon. And there will still be this attitude around the virus that will persist. And that's really important to know, because if an attitude is going to persist long after the virus itself, then who and what we are becoming and how we interact with that is going to ultimately play out, because it's what we'll think about, feel about, and then ultimately bring about. So taking this opportunity to get really clear on what it is that we want to see, what's the life that we want to be living, taking steps to move toward that, having that vision and moving toward that, knowing that it will continue to change and that that's good. Because right now we're in a very polarized state. So, I mean, this is polarized, right? Dark Ages, Renaissance, polarization, big time. So the opportunity in that is basically that there's two ways that can go. One is if it is, so either it's going to be empowered through the things that we do, everything we're talking about here, or it's going to be disempowered, which basically means showing up and allowing the external world to sort of provide the next step for us. Because if we're not very clear on where we're going, what we're doing, don't worry, society will choose for you. So get really clear on that, because here's what will happen. And when we study this in terms of neurology, polarity is in the developmental part of the brain that comes online somewhere between 2 and 5 years old. Okay? So pretty far down, if we look at like the frontal cortex here is the angel lobes, which is where your love and your compassion, your tolerance, your understanding, your discernment, all of these virtues are here. And then all the way down to the brainstem at the very base of the brain, which is just survival, heartbeat, fight or flight, rest and digest, all these things that we don't normally think about. It takes energy to run. When we have peace in the system, we're able to run this frontal cortex, the angel lobes. So we can think, adult mind. When we don't have energy in the system, we run the survival brain, or what some people call the reptilian brain, which is basically what maintains us in survival. So just above that reptilian brain, that's what we're talking about with polarity. We're talking about what comes online between 2 and 4 and 5 years old-ish. So basically a kindergartner at best. Polarity is super important when you're learning how to cross the street. You look both ways before you cross the street. It's really important when you're learning about turning on a hot stove. Don't touch the hot stove, you're gonna get burnt. That's appropriate. But now when we're stuck in this big polarity here, it's a little bit different. And trying to go to a higher reach of the brain when actually it's bringing the amount of energy the nervous system has available down to a lower point, there's then two choices. So if it's energized through the choices you make every day, through your mindset and your heart set, which we talked about in a webinar at Chester Wellness Center, you will, if it's energized, be moving toward a deeper understanding and enrichment through this whole process. Now, no matter what your vision is, no matter what it is that you hope and dream for, no matter what it is that you're here to bring to society and the gifts that you're here to give to the planet, a deeper understanding and enrichment of that will serve you and will empower you forward. The opposite, which is also true, if it's disempowered polarity, what will happen is that we'll spiral into a stage of suffering. In other words, there's nothing that's going to help this, nothing ever works, there's more problems than we know what to do with, and that will bring somebody back down to like a baseline state of survival. Okay, so then we have to pause, lean into that, practice what it is that we're talking about here, so that then you can energize yourself and pop back into the polarity, which is on the planet. It's on the planet. We talked about, or Gina, I think you just talked about the vibe and how that really affects us because we're so sensitive. The truth is, there's 2.5 billion people on lockdown on this planet right now. 2.5 billion people are on lockdown. In some places, martial law. That's pretty intense. The results of that, if we think about that in terms of like, make that an avatar for a person, and we look at a nervous system that would have a response like that, that is a severe PTSD in the nervous system. So there you go. It's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And if that is empowered, if we're practicing the things that we need to power, what we have instead of that is a post-traumatic growth disorder, which truly will open up a whole new realm of possibility for us. And may this crisis not be wasted. May this crisis not be wasted.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. I think just to bring it down to like terms of relative to today, it's that polarity that does keep us from exploring new opportunities, because we get on one side of the fence or the other, where it's like, virus doesn't, well, virus exists. Okay. That's okay. It's like you can still be in there, but say, okay, but I can still take care of my body and I can still do things. I don't have to live totally in the fear. So you can be aware of a virus and the situation, and maybe, flattening the curve by not everybody getting it at once is a good strategy. Does that mean that then you have to stay in that extreme and flatten the curve forever? Or is there room on the other side? Or does it, if you're on the other side, one side of the fence is, okay, everybody should have just went out and got it all at once, So I think the polarity kind of splits it so that you, and I see this in politics and everything. It's like, well, I'm over here, I'm over here. Isn't there any place in between where we can gain wisdom from both ends of that polarity and use it positively?
Yeah, there's one little trick. So there, for those of you out there watching who are part of the nature connection movement, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. And if the idea of a nature connection movement is new to you, get on Google and find some organizations. But we'll get out in the woods and we'll track animals, right? And ultimately what will happen is that someone's mind will start to come in and will start to create a story of what they're seeing on the landscape. And then what they'll do is that there will be an emotional attachment to that, which will then sort of blind them in a way so that they start to see what they want to see in the tracks. And when we're looking at tracks, what we're really doing is we're reading the landscape as if it were a book. It's telling you a story. And it's beautiful because at the end of that story is an actual moving animal. So we're watching the tracks, we're learning. Now, the key here is that emotion will blind you. And that it's important to have an emotional detachment from what it is that you're doing. Like imagine that you're tracking a member of your own family who's lost. The emotion would be exceptionally high. And in that polarized state, what would happen is that the mind would completely skew the tracks. You'd see things that you wouldn't normally otherwise see. Same exact thing happens in society. We get this emotional blindness and we can't really see the opportunity, what you're talking about, Gene. Maintaining a level of emotional detachment, allowing ourselves to separate from our emotions for one moment, which will happen naturally with any of the routines we're talking about here, provides the opportunity to see what's really happening here. Like, what's happening here? What is this telling me? What is this teaching me? And what am I missing?
Yeah, I think we get focused, like Rebecca was talking earlier about the germ theory, and you get focused on, okay, there's this one thing and it's really, really scary and I have to stay away from it. And that's that polarization, you get stuck there. What's interesting that I can contribute from Chinese medicine is that the germ theory doesn't exist in Chinese medicine. So we look at the external environment kind of invading our bodies, and we have a type of energy in our body that's called Wei Qi. It's our defensive Qi. And as long as that's strong, then these external pathogens, these things, whatever it might be that are trying to invade the body, they're not going to get any further. So you have robust immune system. And your defensive energy is a combination of the Kong Qi, we call it, which is the air that we breathe, and the Gu Qi, which is the nutrients that we absorb from our food. So, there's so much to health that it's not like there's one thing. And when I see a lot of patients that come into the clinic, everyone wants to know, okay, well, what's working? And, I'll recommend a supplement or a vitamin to go along with the acupuncture, and then say, but if I take that, then I won't know if the acupuncture is working. And it's a very flawed way of looking at health, because we are such complex beings, and there's so many different levels to health that you need to do. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and everything. And I think bringing it back to the COVID pandemic, if we can really focus on, take the attention away from there's something bad and I need to hide from it, and you get hyper focused on that in this fear state mode, and really just shift your attention more to where can I be robust and strong and keep my immune system strong, so that, and whether that can be emotionally, mentally, and physically, so that you're not being penetrated, either by the fear mentality that's surrounding us all and the media, the fear tactics and whatnot, and the confusion of what's true and what's not. And just so that you can be strong in your own body and have this kind of shield of defensive energy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept you bring up, because I think for a lot of us in the natural healing arts, when a person comes from a sort of mainstream viewpoint, they always want to know, well, what can we do to, they have their, whatever it is they have, their boogeyman, their symptom, what can we do to kill this? And, I take it from the same perspective as you, Allison, is that, well, I know, we're not going to kill anything, but I know that if we can digest our food better and we have a strong microbiome and a good, happy digestive system, I know if we've got toxins out of our body, I know if we have good building blocks and nutrients that are coming in and we have a good diet and lifestyle and we handle stress, I know for a fact that if we do those things, you can't help but be healthier, no matter what. And a vast, vast majority of the time, whatever symptom they have then tends to disappear without having to take the other end of it, where it's like, okay, what do we do to treat this symptom? Do you have a particular herb that treats that symptom? Or so
Right.
I find that an interesting perspective. It sort of relates to everything.
Yeah, Dr. Clerkin, you bring a really good point, as well as Allison. Like, it goes back to, and I know we spoke about this previously, like mindset and heart set. Like, what are you focusing on? What is the focus? And we have been, as a society, inundated with the focus of, I have something, I don't like it, and I need to get rid of it. Like Allison saying, like, that external thing is bad, I gotta protect from it, right? And we have been taught that for forever, which is kind of why we're in the state that we're in with this, and why our health is the way that it is, because we have been there's two pillars or two tiers of consciousness that we can focus on. The current medical model, the current mindset that we have been taught, is the fear of less, lack, and scarcity. Like, I have to get it before it's gone. Think of what's going on right now. The toilet paper disappeared, right? I have to get all of this toilet paper because it's not going to continue to be made. Like, that is the fear. That is the less, that is the scarcity mindset. And that's that's programmed into us. And it has been from a very young age. And think Matt talking about, the lower mind, the reptilian mind of just survival, right? I have to get it before it's gone. Shifting to the second tier of consciousness, which focuses more on abundance, fulfillment, that's bringing the energy back up, bringing your energy state back up and bringing the frontal cortex more online. And it's very easy. I mean, it takes practice, because if you're in pain, you're always thinking about you're in pain. And I did a class about this, and I know I mentioned it last week too, but your spine, your emotions, the law of attraction, like, if you're in pain, it is so hard to not think about not being in pain because you're in pain. But you have to learn why you're in pain, or why are you thinking about that constantly. And instead of looking at what's wrong, look at what's right. And so the second tier of abundance mindset is, just a funny example. Yesterday, Matt and I went to the grocery store, and butter also is, not, it's kind of a commodity at this point. And we like organic unsalted butter, and we haven't been able to find it. And when I looked at it, I saw that there were 2 packages left. And I was like, I'm just going to grab one, because because maybe there's someone else who's been really wanting that butter also. So I didn't grab both out of fear of it not being there the next time. I just grabbed one because that's what we needed. And I'm just like trying to, let's create abundance in this scary situation, right? Let's create more and give something, because so the next person, they get the experience that I get. Oh my gosh, the butter's there. Yes, right? So it creates more energy and it amplifies the field, right? And they don't even know it. Like, people aren't even aware of that. So we have to shift our mindset and focusing on either tier 1 of less lack and scarcity, or tier 2, which is creating more abundance, fulfillment, even joy in life. And if we have too much tension within our system, so focusing on the nervous system and how it's responding, if there's so much tension, it's really, really hard to see the good in things and to see that abundance. So our focus to help people really connect with themselves and change that mindset is to first trust the self and let go of that tension. Like, oh, right, I do have a body. Oh, right, it's me. Wow, I didn't know I had that. You know, it's like working out for the first time. You work out and all of a sudden you're like, man, my quads are really hurting. I didn't even know I had quads, you know, just simple things like that. But just becoming aware and then realizing, wow, I don't have to hold this tension. Why have I been holding this tension? Doesn't matter why. You don't have to anymore. That's the point. So it's creating more energy without even people knowing it. We see it every day. I mean, a new gentleman just came into the practice. Literally, I watch him on the table. I'm pointing because I'm in my adjusting room. I watch him on the table, and he's laying straight and his shoulders are up, and then he'll let them go. And then they'll creep back up and I'll see him move and he'll be like, and he gets up and he's like, I don't even know why my shoulders are up here, but I keep catching myself drop my shoulders. Like, I don't even understand why, you know. I was like, it doesn't matter why. You've been trained, it's been programmed, but you are more aware of it now. And he's like, yeah. And then he gets up and he's like, I feel so light. It's crazy. And all it is just becoming more aware. And the more aware you are, the better choices you can make, not only for yourself, but your family and your community. So balancing that yin and yang, as Allison was saying, and understanding where we're at is a big step. And then we can make different choices. So, you know, oh, I feel better. Awesome. Maybe I'll start taking some supplementation. Maybe I'll start, you know, doing some acupuncture to balance things out. It's those kinds of, the more ease in the system, you have the opportunity to do better things for yourself.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love how you just brought the subconscious, because all of this stuff for the most part is in the subconscious. And you just so well, how you put that was so well. It goes from the subconscious to the conscious. In other words, we're building awareness. We're stretching the awareness from the physiology. This isn't some mental game. This isn't something that you think your way out of. Like, good luck with that. It's not going to work. But what you can do is everything that we're talking about here will feed the subconscious, and we'll start to make the connections. The trail that you walk will become well-worn over time.
Okay.
Awesome.
I want to talk here. Okay.
All right, Becky. I've been waiting for you.
This is all good, but this is a very bad thing happening. Okay. So people survived Auschwitz, okay, by doing this kind of thing. But we've got a situation here where we're being screwed, all right? And the money's all going to big pharma. We're scaring people. Who's getting funded? The people getting funded are people who want control. And I have to say that. I mean, we're trying to develop a vaccine. We're coming up with medications. This is the one disease, one cause. We're going to come up with this. And we're shutting off our farmers. You can't find butter in the, you know, we are totally rewriting our whole world society, and people have lost their jobs. This is outrageous. And yeah, do we need things to physiologically help us cope with that and to keep ourselves strong? Sure, but we're in a big mess here, and it's a real thing. And you're going to see that it is not I don't think it's going to be that easy that things are going to open up and it's going to get back. People are being invited back to work now and they're like over your dead body. One of my clients was telling me that her husband is saying you can come back to work, and they're like, we're not coming back to work. How come yesterday it was deadly to go out into society and today it's okay? You know, we have created, this is a big, big problem, and the ripple effects are outrageous. And it is super important, but we also have to understand that the government officials are not losing their jobs. The people in mainstream media who are paid for by Big Pharma, watch any of the mainstream media, all of the networks, they're all paid for by pharmaceutical ads. What is going on here? And they're not losing their jobs.
Right.
And they're telling us what the answers are. And the answers are vaccination, develop a vaccine, and now we want everybody to get it. Never mind that our elderly people who are getting mercury and aluminum, what, there's an explosion of Alzheimer's disease, really? Mercury, aluminum, and how many vaccines every single year that you get? We're really screwing people. And it's evil, in my opinion. I just have to say that. And
Good. I'm glad you said it, Rebecca, because I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, my motivation and desire in participating in this is to try to like really bring it down to the nuts and bolts of how did we get here, you know, and I think we've been sort of talking about that. We've been on this germ theory and this fear theory, being afraid, and the ramifications of that philosophy are bigger than some people realize, I think. And we do have to be able to step back from all the hype and the news that's just, you know, giving us the bad, you know, how bad it is. When I look at, you know, when I'm researching and looking at all the numbers and, you know, how, when you factor in how many more people have gotten COVID-19 that don't know about it or just had mild symptoms, that the mortality rate is so small. It's the same as a flu in that way. Maybe it's more contagious and it moves faster through society, but the mortality rate is a whole lot smaller than we've been told. And so we're making a lot of major decisions here in our society, like, oh, well, because I'm in fear, I guess for that, you know, because I'm so scared, I guess it's okay that they would mandate a vaccine for everybody because, you know, and that's, I think, for me, the scary part, that we're going down this road. And I think that awareness needs to rise because we're making these decisions all based on that germ theory 100 years ago that has perpetuated our whole medical system, which is controlled by the pharmaceutical companies, which also control our advertising, which control our medical curriculums, which control our laws and our lobbying. And so we as a society have to become aware and make your own choice. But I think, you know, the point, I don't remember who made it, but we're not really going deeper. We're like looking at the news headline and being told what to think on these news programs, which is totally fear-based, you know, place to come from. And then we're allowing major policies, like you said, Becky, that could shift the nature of our society forever. That's a huge thing. And I think that is something definitely worth mentioning and something that we need to slow down here and say, wait a second, what are we doing? Does this really make sense? Because the ramifications of that, you know, as you said this before, Matt, it's like it could be really great or it could be really bad. And I kind of feel this thing energetically, like there's this like uprising of awareness happening, and there's an uprising of control over the situation from those who have money and pharmaceutical companies and government and all that kind of stuff. And there's like this crescendo. We're right here, and this thing is ready to burst. And I'm just curious as to how it's going to go down.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of different forms that could take. And I think the natural progression, and Becky, I'm so glad, and I love your passion and your fire. It gets me jazzed too. And I know it does a lot of people. So thank you for that. And that, like, enough of this, you know, and like taking one's power back, taking back the hope and the spirit of our very communities, our families, and ultimately the future generations. I mean, these are things that have driven tremendous movements throughout human history and that need not be overlooked right now. And what I can tell you is that engaging in this will when energized, break right through. It will start creating tremendous change. And when not enough energy, will bring us into the polarity again. So continue with the ground up approach and keep an eye on where you're headed.
Awesome. You know, I want to mention to the audience out there, we have a couple of questions came in, but certainly if you have any questions or comments and want to participate, please put those in the Q&A box. For those of you that are watching this on Facebook, I guess we're not really monitoring that. I don't know. There's a new program I'm going to get this week that enables you to sort of navigate all that. So I'll share it with the panel if I get that figured out for next time. But also, if you have any questions or topics that you would like to see us cover as a group on a future cast here, then certainly type that in, or you can email any of us, get in contact with us, and we definitely, take a look at that as well. So we don't have too much time left. I don't know how much we could go. We could talk all day on this, but
there's a great question in there. So is it okay to answer a question?
Sure.
Okay, cool. And I think, Becky, you were talking about this a little bit earlier, and so I'll direct this toward you and the rest of the panel, of course, but Amy's asking, I thought we don't have the immunity against this particular virus. However, many people are getting over it. Please explain.
If I could just comment. So this is very interesting. This Dr. Newt Witkowski, he lives in the Upper East Side, and there's a wonderful, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'd love to give you his interview, but this was just out a couple of weeks ago. He received his PhD in computer science from the University of Stuttgart and his SCD in medical biometry from the Eberhard Karls University Tübingen, both Germany. He worked for 15 years with Klaus Dietz, a leading epidemiologist who coined the term reproduction number on the epidemiology of HIV before heading for 20 years the Department of Biostatistics, Epidemiology, and Research Design at the Rockefeller University, New York. Dr. Witkowski is currently the CEO of Asdera LLC, a company discovering novel treatments for complex diseases from data of genome-wide association studies. So I just want you to know this guy's not a chump. He's not somebody out there trying to, just sitting there spinning a web. But this was about New Yorkers are throwing corona potlucks and visiting speakeasies. Dr. Newt M. Witkowski, the former chief biostatistician and epidemiologist at Rockefeller University Hospital, told the Post he was not practicing social distancing and said he regularly goes to one of 2 illicit restaurants secretly operating in his Upper East Side neighborhood. It's like the prohibition. This is crazy. Quote, yesterday I went to my favorite speakeasy and had dinner, he said, saying there were about 8 others dining alongside him. He declined to name the establishment. The veteran physician believes social distancing will only prolong the virus by preventing the natural development of herd immunity. Quote, all respiratory epidemics end when 80% of all people have become immune, he said. Then, if a new person gets infected, the person doesn't find anybody else to infect. The best strategy you can do is isolate the old and fragile people, make sure that nobody visits the nursing homes, then let the children go to school and let people go to work. They have a mild disease, then they become immune, and after 2 or 3 weeks, the epidemic is over. And he's talking about this, COVID-19. So, I mean, there are many professional voices like this, many highly educated scientific people who get this. And they're not being interviewed on any of these news networks. Nobody wants to hear from them because it doesn't feed the fear that's keeping the whole machinery going, that keeps them on that's paying their paychecks. I'm sorry, but there is a lot of self and special interest here. And, we have to really, really hold them to account.
So just to answer Amy's question more directly, because I totally agree with those points made, but that we don't have immunity for this particular virus.
Yeah.
In my understanding, we don't have immunity to any particular virus until we come in contact with it. And then we create that immunity. So, the fact is that many people are getting this virus, they don't even know they have it, and some people have mild symptoms. So obviously, we can create an immunity to it.
So
Yeah,
if we,
just
oh, go ahead.
well, I was just curious. Maybe Becky, you might know a little bit more about this. Like the strains are constantly mutating too, aren't there? I could be totally wrong
Yeah.
on this particular with COVID-19. There's already 2 strains that
Yeah.
have been present, and it's probably to some degree going to continue to mutate, which most flus and viruses tend to do, unlike something like polio, which stays the same, right? So, and maybe I'm just saying, but my question in my head has always been, if you're getting a vaccine that's already retroactive, like because of whatever one strain, it's already mutated to something else. So then you have to do another vaccine, and then you're going to be okay with all of a sudden taking all these vaccines for different strands when you might have already gotten it and have the immunity anyway. So if I'm
Right.
going down the wrong way, I apologize, but that's just
No,
something.
no,
I think.
the coronaviruses are RNA viruses and they're always mutating. So yeah, it's just like the flu. That's why the flu shot is like, you know,
It's hit or miss every year. You never know.
They know how to survive, right? So they mutate. So you come up with this great thing. How much taxpayer dollar has gone into this thing, and how much are we getting pressured and strong-armed into taking it when we know it's not good for us, and yet it's not even effective. It's no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we're on this note, I just want to mention this real quick as far as like a strategy moving forward for the next 50 to 100 years. Say we have a new virus, and so there's a new vaccine, and then there's a new this, and there's a new vaccine. They have, my understanding, about 270 vaccines in the wheelhouse to bring out. How many vaccines can one take in a year? When does it become harmful? Some people say one vaccine can be harmful, but let's say one vaccine isn't harmful or harmful to a particular person. There's got to be some limit at some point. I don't know when that is, and they don't know when that is because they haven't done the research on this.
And they're not liable.
And they're not liable.
They have complete. Yeah.
Why do the research when you're not liable, I guess, is a good,
Right. So let's take a look at the whole system for a second. So we deal with nervous system health specifically. That's what we do. And what we know is that the nervous system is directly tied into the immune system and that they create a super system. So in terms of immunity, when we're looking at it through the lens of the nervous system and its autonomic control, there's basically all of these different possibilities for when someone comes into contact with a new virus. And there's another question here. I'm going to answer these both with the same bit here. So Tara's asking about getting swayed by bad news. How do we counteract counterfeit news, et cetera? So treat this just like a virus too, Tara. It's a great question. So when a new pathogen comes into a system, if the system has a baseline of health that is far superior, let's say, to the majority of the people in the rest of the community, which we can estimate is somewhere around 15% plus or minus 5 of the population, the virus is going to come in, their immune system is immediately going to squash it, and it's going to be dead. They're not a carrier, which is important, and they're not going to experience any sort of symptom whatsoever. Not even a blip. Maybe they're a little tired one afternoon, and that's it. They listen to their body and they're good to go. So that's sort of the guiding light. That's what we're looking towards when we look at optimal performance, health, and well-being. That's where we're headed. So the other thing, now let's look at a system. This is a much larger part of the population, not quite as healthy. They've got some interference in their nervous system. There's some biochemical processes and some different genes that are bottled up. So they will also not experience symptoms, but will be a carrier because their immune system doesn't get rid of it fast enough. That's the whole, like, wear a mask, we don't know who a carrier is, all this other stuff. So that's that demographic. Then we talk about comorbidities. In other words, people that have a bunch of other chronic conditions are the ones that are getting really sick. We've had a couple affected in our greater family that are no longer with us through this. So we've seen this firsthand happen. And basically there were a number of other things. They didn't have the immunity or the freedom in their system, and this was their time. So we've seen those three things happen. So the health of the system, in other words, the preparation, everything we talk about here in terms of creating vibrant health, all plays into how you create a system that's going to be able to squash anything really and keep on moving in the best way that it possibly can. And that includes, pathogen. It also includes what we're taking in through the media or social or whatever it is that gives us that discernment that helps us run the higher reaches of the brain, has a more free system so that we can either not be affected by it, not be aware of it, or not care to comment truthfully, like on a deep truth, like personal truth level. That would be a very healthy system, because then you're free to have discernment and move that into a higher place of energy, a lot like what you're talking about, Becky, and you're talking about, Gene, everyone's talking about how we drive this into something great and we truly can create a renaissance rather than let someone else decide for us what comes next.
What we've done, Dale and I, is we used to always, get up in the morning and turn on WMUR, you get to see Ray Brewer standing outside in the dark in the freezing cold in front of the courthouse talking about something on location. We get a kick out of that, get the morning news, whatever. And then it would go into GMA, which we can't stand anyway, but it would just kind of do that. And we'd kind of laugh at their slant and do that. We don't do that anymore. We listen to the news, about once a day, we do the White House briefing on this, because you have to be aware of what's going on. But we have just, I hope that they realize they're shooting themselves in the foot, and I hope people just turn it off. Just don't be listening to this all the time, because it is just inoculating yourself with, like what Jean was saying earlier, and Matt and everybody, with these negative things. And you get this energy that comes from this great stuff. If somebody's like speaking to you lies and speaking to you fear, it's very hard not to pick up on that, no matter how strong you are. So limit it. Get your news. Find out what they're saying. Find out what this side is saying, what that side is saying, and stuff, and then turn it off. Put on some nice music. Write a poem. Do paint. Do something else. Yeah.
And from a nuts and bolts standpoint, again, we just have to. I've heard the word discernment used a couple of times here, and I think we have to be willing to take it. If we're going to have an opinion, we have to be willing to take it another step and say, okay, well, where did this come from? Who stands to profit from this? Who's paying for this? And those are really important questions. And so if we have, I don't know, like somebody that may be directing national policy, but they also happen to be on a board that promotes vaccinations, could there be a conflict of interest here? And we have to be able to look at that and not just take in, honestly, my opinion of news, I've known this for years. I used to be, I was a Ron Paul supporter way back when. And when I saw what they did to him and blackballed him, I started paying attention to it. And I'm talking on both sides of the aisle, by the way. And now I'm just convinced that news is, mainstream news is 90% propaganda, spin, and about 10% actual fact. And then they take it and everything is an opinion based on that. So we really have to, I think as a society, start doing our due diligence and not just sit there and take whatever we're being told as the truth, because it's just not. So those are my 2 cents.
Well said. Very well said, Dr.
Thank you all.
I just want to quickly add, if you're kind of wondering what can you do also just to kind of increase your defensive chi and your immune system, and I think we all kind of agree on this point, no matter our lens of medicine, is one question I'll ask most of my patients is what lights you up, what makes you really excited, like what gives you energy. And that's different for everybody. For me, it's snowboarding, and other people it's knitting, or other people it's playing their guitar. And if you can do that and incorporate that into your life, then that's gonna increase. In Chinese medicine, we say that builds your chi, and I don't know how you guys would vocalize that, but that makes you stronger as a person, and it makes you more resilient to whatever comes your way, whether it's the fear tactics or the fake news or the scary germs out there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a big one is laughter. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
Laughter is going to be
Yeah.
like the best medicine because what did you say, Becky?
Improves immunity by increasing production of antibodies and increasing activation of T cells, including natural killer cells. Laughter also improves mood, decreases stress hormones, lowers bad cholesterol and systolic blood pressure, and raises good cholesterol. Also lowers pain by triggering the release of endorphins, the body's natural opioids. Laughter has also been found to strengthen social connections. And the Lung Association also reports that when you laugh, your lungs get rid of stale air and more oxygen can enter. This is because laughter helps to expand alveoli in your lungs that are responsible for getting oxygen into your lungs. This in turn results, woo! Let's laugh!
Isn't that amazing though, how like the opposite ends of the spectrum, speaking about polarity, how like we're meant to be happy.
Yeah.
One of my spiritual gurus would write, paraphrasing, basically, if we want to make a contribution to the world, the best thing we can do is be happy over all other things.
Yeah.
So go be happy. Let's be happy. Don't let the news
Because
bring you
I'm
down.
happy.
Let's all be happy together. Let's make that our mantra this week. We're going to be happy this week and see what kind of a change we can create with that.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay.
So
Beautiful.
well, I as always have enjoyed this thoroughly. I just find I love talking about this stuff and kind of weaving into the different concepts and then having a conversation about it. So I imagine we'll continue. We could probably talk about this for hours, but we will continue this conversation next week. Anybody have anything else they want to say before we close up the meeting?
Just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in and thanks. And we love doing this and we hope it's helpful for you.
Yeah.
And we're happy to be here.
Yes.
We're so grateful for all of you out there because the truth is that we're independently, we're all islands. We have the folks that we're able to care for, and outside of that, our reach is limited. So it's truly the folks out there who are watching this right now, who take this inspiration and do something with it that make a big difference. So thank you in advance for your actions.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Those of you who gave some encouraging comments at the end, appreciate that. Definitely, tune in.
Just want to say this, we got some comments right at the end. Awesome session today, going to watch replay. Thanks everyone, super. I love this, guys, thank you. Thanks, great to hear the various viewpoints. So we're glad to get that feedback. Thank you for chiming in with that, appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And so, definitely share this with your friends. If you're on Facebook and you're streaming it through there, or even if you're doing this through Zoom, you can go to our Facebook page, Proactive Health Collective of Keene, or any of our individual Facebook pages. We're streaming it there as well, and you can just share it to your page. And so we're just, the more we get the word out, the positive energy, we're really here. We enjoy having this conversation with each other and for the the people that we have on here, but we really, I think I can speak for the group, we want to make an impact. We want to create some waves here. So we would love your help, the audience at home. We would love your help in that as well. So thank you again. Looking forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
So long.